Hey there, Kim here. In today's video, we're going to be going over how more than 300,000 Americans in 33 states were prematurely cut off from unemployment. 13 states are still taxing unemployment, and we will be reviewing which states those are, as well as one more state decides to add work search requirements, and New York is starting to collect unemployment on overpayments. And then last thing we'll go over is the unemployment benefit year could face gaps in extending payments. So first story, 300,000 Americans were prematurely cut off from extended benefits. And the reason is because in those particular states, the unemployment rate got to a point that it was low, and that in turn turned off extended benefits. So typically what happens is in a normal economy, normal life, you receive your state allotted unemployment. So whether that is 13 weeks or maybe 6 months, you receive whatever amount of weeks that your state gives for unemployment. However, if the unemployment rate gets to a certain point, meaning it gets higher, then what the state decides to turn on is something called extended benefits. Now, like I said, extended benefits is only turned on when the unemployment rate for that state is incredibly high. So obviously with the pandemic, extended benefits for many states has been turned on for a while. Now, unfortunately, the state does have the authority, although it is dependent upon the unemployment rate at the time, but they can literally end extended benefits at any time. And I've heard horror stories last year of people being on extended benefits and all of a sudden getting an email or notification from the state saying, hey, by the way, Saturday's going to be your last check. And yeah, when they don't give you notice, it's not a good situation. So anyway, 33 states are turning off extended benefits. So if you are in one of those states currently collecting extended benefits, you may receive a gap in payment. The good news is at least you'll be able to get back onto a program called PEUC, which you were probably on prior to getting on extended benefits. But please know that even though it might take a couple weeks for you to get switched back onto PEUC, at least you know that that is an option, and you should be able to collect, as long as you qualify, up until September 6th. So no worries there. But if you were on extended benefits and your extended benefits ended and you've been certifying and you're not getting paid, then you have to wait for the state to place you back on a PEUC. And of course, if you're waiting a couple of weeks not getting paid, I highly recommend that you reach out to them. Just see if you can push along that issue so you can start to get paid. Now, unfortunately, as far as paying taxes on unemployment, as you probably know, or hopefully you know by now, you do have to pay federal taxes on unemployment. Now, as of last year, they decided to pass a bill where you don't have to pay federal taxes on $10,200. So that could be a, significant savings, obviously depending on the tax bracket that you are in. But unfortunately, there are still 13 states that are still taxing unemployment. Now, those states are Colorado, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Kentucky, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Mississippi, North Carolina, New York, Rhode Island, South Carolina, and West Virginia. Now, there are some states that don't tax any unemployment, and then there are some that only tax a partial amount, which is kind of cool. So as you can see on the screen, here is a map showing which state participates in what, so you can get an idea of, what your state wants. So for those of you that filed your taxes prior to the bill being signed, as you know, you don't have to pay taxes on $10,200. Now, if your state is a state that decided to waive that requirement as well, then you may need to go and amend your taxes. So then maybe you could get a refund on your state tax as well. And obviously, you definitely want to check out your state's guidelines on what they're doing with unemployment. But as a starter, a guide, so to speak, here is a map that you could take a look at so you could see where your state falls. So in order for you to collect unemployment and keep collecting unemployment, the rule is you have to perform work search requirements. Now, because of the pandemic, because businesses were closing left and right, most states decided to waive this requirement. I think Texas is the only one that, for the most part, you still had to perform work search requirements during the entire pandemic, or at least most of it. Now, most states decided to waive this requirement. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on where you live and how the job market is, and if businesses are actually open, some states are starting to require people on unemployment to start performing those work search requirements. Now, again, Texas was one of those states that you pretty much had to do most of the pandemic anyway. Another state, which is Virginia, starting in June, you must report 2 job searches per week. And that's going to be the start of most states following suit. So if you're not sure if your state is requiring work search requirements, definitely take a look at your state's Department of Labor pages just to make sure that you are indeed doing that if they, come back and do an audit of you. Because obviously the last thing you want is for you to be collecting all this money, not performing them, or maybe you are, but maybe you're just not documenting them. Then, you definitely want to check it out, because I would hate for you to be in the situation where you're collecting unemployment and then they reach out to you, whether it's 6 months from now or maybe a year from now, asking for information or, documentation of this, and then only for you to not be prepared and not have any. So, definitely take a look at your state's Department of Labor page and see what they are requiring. Now we have New York is starting to collect on unemployment overpayments, and obviously most of you don't live in New York, but the only reason why I'm mentioning this as well as everything else is because you don't know if other states are going to start to follow suit or not. So just wanted to bring this awareness. But the state Department of Labor will be contacting New Yorkers this week to collect on overpayments of unemployment benefits made between April and May of 2020. And it says the Twitter thread from the department said notices will be sent out to claimants so that they can begin repaying, appeal, or request a waiver for the overpayments made. Benefit claimants that do not file a request for a hearing or waiver within 30 days of receiving the notice will see benefits reduced 20% until the overpayment is recovered. And so in case you are in that situation, whether you're in New York or not, and you do find yourself in an overpayment, situation, I've heard horror stories that unemployment will actually keep 100% of the person's check. And from what I've heard, you can contact them and have them take out a certain percentage instead of them taking the entire thing, right? I think I heard that. Anyway, the best thing to do, I don't want to propose what I think I heard because things could change and obviously could differ depending on the state. But if you find yourself that the state is collecting 100% of your check, you definitely want to reach out and see if you can, have them maybe just take a certain percentage instead of the entire thing, so then you can actually afford to live. Now, I've talked about this many times on the channel. In fact, I created a separate video about this, but I want to talk about your benefit year-end date. Now, what this is, when you've collected unemployment for over a year or for a year, it is a federal law that state labor agencies must review every unemployment claim after 1 year for the benefits to continue. So, obviously, according to the Department of Labor, each state sets its own unemployment eligibility guidelines, but most typically qualify if they are unemployed through no fault of their own, meet state work and wage requirements, and meet any additional state requirements. So, what this means is if you've been on unemployment for a year, which a lot of people have because of the pandemic, then it's a federal law for the state to actually review your unemployment claim, just to see if, number one, you qualify for a brand new unemployment claim, or two, maybe you don't qualify for an unemployment claim, but maybe you qualify for another program. There are some states that are waiving this requirement, depending on if you've worked during the past year or not. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is there are some people. So I guess a couple of things. Number one, if you've reached your benefit year end and you're certifying like week after week and you're not getting paid, then that could mean that you must file a brand new unemployment claim in your state. Again, the best thing to do is check out your Department of Labor pages for your specific state, as well as social media, and see what your state requires. Now, it's so hard because I just wish all 50 states would follow the same rule. Then I'd be able to be like, yeah, this is what you need to do. But of course, they have to make things difficult. Now, one thing, if you are collecting PUA, and if you've been collecting PUA for an entire year or close to it, in most states, the majority of states, you do not need to file a brand new unemployment claim. You simply keep on certifying as you will, or as you have been doing, and you should be good to go as far as receiving payments as you typically would. However, if you're on PEUC or extended benefits and you reach your benefit year-end date and you're not getting paid after you keep certifying, way after your benefit year-end date has come, then definitely you want to reach out to your state, because what they're probably looking for is this application, this brand new application for unemployment. Now, if you are in a situation where maybe you collecting unemployment for an entire year, and maybe you worked a part-time job during the past year, so you worked long enough for you to qualify for regular unemployment again, but you find yourself at a wage which is drastically lower than what you were collecting every single week on unemployment last year, then you definitely want to call out your unemployment office, your state's unemployment office. So you should not see a drastic change in your weekly benefit amount. From my understanding, your pay should not decrease more than $25 every single week. And if it does, the state should put you on a program that, I don't want to say pays you more, but again, bottom line is, if maybe last year you were receiving $400 a week, and then all of a sudden you file for regular unemployment again, and now you're receiving $200 a week, then you definitely want to call out your state and communicate with them and get that changed, because you should not have that drastic of a change. Because, again, we're still going through this pandemic. Maybe pre-pandemic it would be a different situation, but because we're still going through this pandemic, you shouldn't see a drastic change. So I just wanted to mention that for awareness, because unfortunately I'm sure that that's happening for a lot of people. So that is it for today's news. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next video.